the accuser argues with God. Like, why are you arguing with God? But he's arguing with God. You know, it's almost kind of irritating a little bit. The accuser argues with the Lord. He's made it too easy, right?
Right.
It sounds like something the accuser would say. You've made it too easy on him. Skin for skin, he says. All a man has, he will give for his life.
Right.
Just stretch out your hand and touch his flesh and bones. Take his health from him. And once again, the Lord takes up the challenge. So the accuser first says, take away your blessings out of his life. And now he's like, what else can I say? So now I'll go to his health. You can take his health and he'll turn from you. And God says, all right, let me take you up on this challenge and let's see what happens. And so then comes this crucial temptation of Job. His wife and his friends. So now his health is gone. His children are gone. His home is gone. The servants are gone. The idea here is we say servants in his home, but really that's the idea of his wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we see people now, we would say other things maybe about their wealth that was stripped from them. So this is the idea. His wealth is now gone. So now his health is bad. His wife is still around, right? So he's got his wife still, and his friends are going to come around. His wife urges him to do this. His wife says, curse God and die, she says. And Job's reply is to shut her up and accept the trouble God has given. But then it comes his three friends. This is challenging, right? Because that's emotional problems, right? That's trouble. That's difficult. That's what the person you love, the person you're closest to, right? And he's broken there, right? And then come his three friends to comfort him. And they are so astonished by his suffering, they're just silent for 7 days. And this is this kind of, it's to try to depict this, like this, how great his suffering was. And his friends can't say anything. So here's the thing. Is often this is looked at, this whole book of the book of Job, we talk about pain and suffering. Why do we suffer? If God is good, then there should be all good things and there should be no suffering. And when we look at someone like Job and how much suffering he's going through, and we could easily look to this book to say, this has to say something about pain and suffering. This has to bring some kind of understanding as to why we have to suffer. But yet, for thousands of years, people have debated this and gone over this and discussed this, and yet there still is really no real good conclusion to that exactly. Besides, we just kind of have to accept that and believe that God has some kind of reasoning there. But yet people will still look to this book to try to find that reasoning and try to find that understanding, or come to grips at least with it, to maybe say, if we just keep on enduring, you know. And so there's a couple other elements here that I think that are important. And suffering is not easy, and it doesn't go away fast. And I'm not trying to belittle suffering, because I think suffering is bad. You know, I recently watched a video on empathy, and it's talking about, they explain in this video that when talking to someone going through a hard time, never start a sentence with "at least," you know, at least. And they're talking about empathy, this idea, you know, no one wants to hear "at least," right? You know, your lost job, well, at least you have some money saved up, right? That's the kind of idea here, right? Pain, difficult circumstances, we don't want to belittle that, right? Those are challenging. And empathy is this idea of putting yourself in the person's shoes and kind of understanding the circumstance from their point of view, kind of. Instead, we want to see it in that kind of way. When people feel overloaded and buried, there's no easy way out of that, right? And I'm not to speak to that tonight. There's not usually, at least, a quick and easy way to get out of suffering. There's no real quick and easy way to end the pain or some kind of emotional difficulty, whether that be marriages or whether that be family that have passed away or situations at work, lost job, those kind of things. They don't go away really easy. And that's not exactly what I'm trying to speak to tonight. Those things take time, and it is very important what you do during that time, right?
Exactly.
So Job went silent for 7 days. And he breaks his 7 days silence by cursing not God, but the day of his birth. Now we get into it here with Job. And this is Job chapter 3, and we're going to start in verse 1. So Job was suffering. Remember, his wife said some things to him. And here it is. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Verse 2. He said, "May the day of my birth perish, and the night that said, a boy is conceived. That day may it turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. May no light shine on it." He rejects God's act of creation. He wants not only to die, but to have never been born. Job's comforters articulate this. And in a common view back then, in this kind of wisdom tradition in the Hebrew Bible, they give them their speeches. I said his friends came, they were silent. And they all start going through speeches, but none of it seems to help. None of it seems to help. Then Job addresses God, and he pleads with him to be merciful. And at first, he wishes that God would just leave him alone. And I think this is where we're going to find it tonight. This is really important. So we're going to go to Job 10, verse 18. So we've jumped significantly in the chapters here, and the book is rather large, but I wanted to pull a few of these pieces out. This is Job chapter 10, verse 18. "Why then did you bring me out of the womb?" This is Job talking to God. "Why then did you bring me out of the womb?" So he's just laying there and suffering. He's got some skin disease. I mean, he's in complete suffering in his body. He has the emotional suffering. He has his wife accusing him. Devil's accusing him. "Why then did you bring me out of the womb?" Why did this ever begin in the first place? "I wish I had died before any eyes saw me." Those are some powerful words. I wish I was just dead. If only I had never come into being, or had been carried straight from the womb to the grave. And this is it, verse 20. "Are not my few days almost over?" And get what he says here to God. He says, "Turn away from me, so I can have a moment's joy." 21. "Before I go to the place of no return, to the land of gloom and utter darkness." 22. "To the land of deepest night, of utter darkness and disorder, where even the light is like darkness." Job is expressing himself in his deep suffering, the deep pain, the deepness of his situation. And many of us lose faith in even far less circumstances. And here Job is suffering, and he's just expressing himself to God. The deepest, darkest moment of Job's despair is now. "Turn away from me so I can have a moment's joy." Now I find this very interesting, because he says this, and he says this on the one hand here, Job is telling God to go away, right? And on the other hand, he doesn't stop talking to God. Job can't get away from God. He can't leave God alone. And God can't leave Job alone.
Mm-hmm.
And when this was seen, I thought, so powerful,
Yeah.
that this is more than just pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
This is relationship, right?
That's good. Mm-hmm.
That there's more going on here than just Job suffering. There's a relationship that's here, that's going back and forth. And it's over here, and then it's here, and they keep going back and forth, but neither of them can really let go of each other. Turn away from me so I can have a moment's joy. Before I go, he just continues on. And he continues, and then the story doesn't go in the book of Job that okay, Job then turned his back on God and walked away. And the story ends like that. And we wouldn't have to read, if we're reading our Bible through for the year, we thought it'd save us a couple days reading through the book of Job. But that's not how it ends. It could have ended like that. But Job can't get away from it. Even though he says, turn from me. And we know that that's how relationships are, aren't they? And anyone who's married knows that a relationship's not always like it is when you're dating, right? And not everything's so smooth, right? And this is how a relationship with God is kind of like. And we see this in Job's life. But he can't let go of him. Job can't let go of God. And this is certainly a theme here. At the beginning of the story, God can't stop bragging on Job. Remember that? God's bragging on Job, and here Job can't stop talking to God, and this is a relationship of the deepest kind. Even through the suffering, they can't let go of each other. Despite the pain, they can't let go. No matter how dark the moment is, we cannot let go of God.